My boyfriend ghosted me for a month, leaving me searching for answers. Then, after a month of silence, he came back to tell me he needed a break. Hello everyone, I never thought I'd be writing a story like this. I always believed that the hardest thing about relationships would be the petty fights, the awkward silences, or even the moments of distance. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened when my boyfriend ghosted me. Let me start from the beginning. I met David about a year ago. He was everything I thought I wanted in a boyfriend: kind, funny, easygoing, and incredibly thoughtful. We connected instantly. The conversations flowed effortlessly, the chemistry was undeniable, and it felt like we had this unspoken understanding of each other. For months, things between us were smooth, and I genuinely felt like I had found someone special. We spent time together, shared our dreams, and built memories. I started envisioning a future with him. But then, without any warning, things started to change. It began subtly, with him becoming more distant, less responsive to my texts, taking longer to reply. At first, I chalked it up to his busy work schedule. He was a hard worker, always moving from one task to another, so I assumed he just didn't have time. But as the days stretched into weeks, it became impossible to ignore. I remember the exact day it happened. I sent him a text asking how his day had been, and instead of his usual lively response, there was silence. I waited for hours. Nothing. The next day, I tried again. Still nothing. At that point, I didn't know what to think. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe something had come up. Maybe he was just overwhelmed. But as the days went by, and then a week, and then another, the silence was deafening. It wasn't just that he wasn't texting me back. It was that he seemed to have vanished completely. Every time I tried calling, I went straight to voicemail. His social media profiles went quiet, no posts, no stories, nothing. It was like he had erased himself from my life without a trace. I remember the feeling that overwhelmed me. I would check my phone constantly, hoping to see a message from him, but every time, I was left disappointed. I asked myself a million questions. Did I do something wrong? Was he seeing someone else? Had he just lost interest in me? But no answers came. Every message I sent was met with silence. I started feeling like I was chasing something that wasn't real, questioning whether our entire relationship had been nothing more than an illusion. I turned to my friends for advice, but no one could offer me any answers. They were just as confused as I was. A few of them suggested I move on, told me that if he really cared, he would have gotten in touch by now. But I couldn't. I kept thinking that maybe he was going through something personal, something he wasn't ready to talk about. I wasn't ready to give up on us. But the truth was, I was falling apart inside. The waiting was excruciating. Each day that passed, I could feel myself slipping further into uncertainty and anxiety. I wasn't sure if he had just moved on, if I had somehow messed up, or if there was something bigger going on that I didn't know about. I tried everything to get through to him: messages, calls, even reaching out to mutual friends to ask if anyone had heard from him. But there was nothing. It was like he had vanished into thin air. And then, just when I was starting to lose hope and prepare myself for the harsh reality of what might be happening, the unexpected happened. After nearly a month of silence, David showed up. He messaged me one night, out of the blue. "We need to talk." I could barely believe it. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the screen. After all the unanswered texts, the silence, and the pain of wondering if I had been forgotten, he was back. I immediately replied, trying to hide my mix of excitement, anger, and confusion. I asked what had happened, why he had disappeared without a word. His reply came hours later. "I'm sorry, I needed some time to think." That was it. No explanation, no context, just the words I had been desperately hoping to hear, an acknowledgement that he was alive and that he had, for some reason, stepped away from our relationship. But at that point, the excitement of hearing from him faded quickly, replaced by an overwhelming sense of frustration. What did time to think even mean? Why couldn't he have at least communicated that with me? Why did I have to go through all the pain of wondering if I had done something wrong? I didn't know what to say, but I knew I had to hear him out. He asked if we could meet up, and despite everything, I agreed. I needed answers. I needed closure. It had been too long, and I couldn't keep living in limbo. We arranged to meet at our favorite cafe, the place where we had spent countless hours talking, laughing, and planning our futures. When I saw him walk through the door, my heart sank. He looked tired, distant, nothing like the man I had fallen for. His eyes were clouded with uncertainty, and his usual smile was absent. It was like he was a stranger standing in front of me. He sat down across from me, and we exchanged awkward pleasantries. But then, after a long silence, he finally spoke. "I think I need a break," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about us came crashing down. I stared at him, unable to process what he had just said. "I need a break." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating any hope I had left of understanding him. My mind raced, trying to find some meaning in his words. A break? From what? From me? From us? We had just met up after a month of complete silence, and the first thing he says is that he needs a break. It didn't make sense. It didn't add up. I had been waiting for an explanation, for him to say anything that would make sense of his disappearance, and yet here we were, facing each other, and all he could offer was that he needed space. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. I wanted to scream at him, to demand an answer. Why did you leave without saying anything? Why did you ghost me for a month? But instead, I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. He looked back at me, his eyes filled with something regret? Guilt? I couldn't tell, and I didn't know if I cared anymore. "I don't understand," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "What does that even mean? A break? After everything? You just disappeared." I was left wondering if I'd done something wrong, if I was the problem. David shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I could see the tension in his posture, as if he was struggling to find the right words to explain himself. But none of this made sense. He had left me in the dark for a month, and now he was sitting across from me, offering nothing but vague words. I felt betrayed. More than that, I felt disrespected. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet. I wasn't sure what I needed. I don't know. I thought I could figure things out on my own. I needed some time to think about everything. And I didn't want to drag you into it. "You did drag me into it," I replied, my voice shaking now. "By not saying anything. By leaving me to wonder what happened to you. You didn't give me a choice. You didn't even give me an explanation." David stared at his hands, his fingers fidgeting with the cup in front of him. "I know," he said, his tone regretful. "And I'm really sorry. I never meant for it to get to this point. I needed space. I thought it would be better for both of us if I just stepped back and tried to figure things out on my own." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. The frustration I had been holding back for weeks bubbled up to the surface. "You think stepping away for a month, not responding to me, not even letting me know if you were okay, is better for us?" My voice was rising now, and I couldn't stop it. "That's not space, David. That's ghosting. You disappeared, and I had no idea what was happening." "I know," he repeated, his eyes meeting mine. "And I'm sorry. I don't expect you to understand. I just needed to think. And I didn't know how to communicate that to you. You don't think I deserved some kind of explanation?" I shot back, the hurt seeping into my words. "I was left in the dark, and you expect me to just accept that? You think I could just sit here and wait for you to figure it out?" David ran a hand through his hair, looking down at the table. "I didn't want to hurt you. I really didn't. But I've been going through some personal stuff, and I didn't want to bring you into it. I thought I could handle it on my own." "Personal stuff?" I echoed, incredulous. "Is that all it is? What happened to being in a relationship? What happened to talking to each other, communicating? You didn't even think to let me know that you were dealing with something? You just shut me out completely?" He looked at me now, his face a mixture of guilt and confusion. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just didn't want to burden you. I thought you'd be better off without me for a while." I wasn't sure where my head was at. I let out a breath, trying to process what he was saying. "So, you thought the best thing to do was to just disappear? To leave me without any explanation, to make me wonder if I did something wrong, if you had just lost interest? That was your solution. I know it was stupid, he said, his voice cracking slightly. And I regret it. I shouldn't have handled it that way. I shouldn't have let it go on for so long. But I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to talk about it. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to be mad at him for doing this to me, for putting me through all of this. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the pain I felt. The confusion, the uncertainty, the fear that maybe this was the end. Maybe he didn't want to be with me anymore. I just don't understand, I said softly, feeling the tears threatening to spill. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you have to go through all of that alone? I thought we were supposed to be a team. David's eyes softened, and he reached across the table, his hand hovering for a moment before gently touching mine. I know. I messed up. I should have been more open with you. I should have communicated better. But I don't want to lose you. I pulled my hand away, not ready to let him touch me yet. His apology, his words, they didn't erase the hurt. I needed more than that. I needed answers. I needed clarity. I don't know if I can just go back to how things were, I said, the words barely escaping my lips. You hurt me, David. You left me, and now you expect me to just accept that you need a break? I don't know what that even means. I know, he said quietly, his eyes filled with remorse. And I'm not asking you to just accept it. I'm asking for another chance. I don't expect things to go back to normal right away, but I want to try. I sat there, feeling the weight of his words and my own emotions. Part of me wanted to say yes, to give him another chance. But another part of me felt like I needed to protect myself. I couldn't just let him back in without knowing if things would be different. Could I trust him again? Could I trust that he wouldn't disappear when things got tough? The silence between us was thick, and I knew the answer wasn't going to come easily. The road ahead was unclear, and I had no idea if this relationship was worth fighting for. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let him back in until I was sure that what he was offering was real. The silence lingered between us, each second stretching longer than the last. I was torn. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to accept his apology and let things go back to how they were, but another part of me knew that I couldn't just forget everything that had happened. I couldn't ignore the way he had disappeared without a trace, leaving me to pick up the pieces of my own shattered heart. David was staring at me, his eyes filled with desperation. Please, he whispered, his voice shaky. I know I messed up, but I want to try again. I want to make it work. I took a deep breath, the weight of his words pressing heavily on my chest. Can I really trust him again? After everything, could I really let him back into my life? I looked at him, trying to read his expression, searching for something that would tell me he was being sincere, that he was really willing to change. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could ever fully trust him again. I don't know, David, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can go back to how things were. You hurt me. You left me in the dark for a month, and now you're asking me to just forget about it. He shook his head, his hands trembling as he reached out to me. I'm not asking you to forget. I just want the chance to prove that I can be better, that I can be the person you deserve. I know I've made mistakes, but I don't want to lose you. The words sounded sincere, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same. He had shown me who he was during that month of silence, and I couldn't just ignore that. I took another deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. I need time, I finally said, my voice firm. I need to think about all of this. I need to figure out if I can trust you again, if this is something worth fighting for. David nodded, his expression one of both relief and understanding. I'll wait for you, no matter how long it takes. Just know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. The words hung in the air, but they felt hollow. I wanted to believe him, I really did, but my heart wasn't sure if it could take another round of waiting, of hoping for something that might not come. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a mix of emotions, confusion, anger, hurt, but mostly I felt exhausted. Exhausted from the uncertainty, from the unanswered questions, from the months of trying to make sense of what had happened. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was clear. I had to protect myself. Would I give him another chance? I didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I could. The path forward was unclear, and I wasn't ready to walk down it just yet. The decision wasn't just about him anymore, it was about me, about what I needed and what I deserved. And right now, all I could do was take a step back and figure it out on my own.